All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Tuesday, I guess it is. I don't know about anyone else, but days are kind of running together for me at this point. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to chat with you for the next hour or so. My name is Hillary Lundberg. I'm an assistant director of admission at Northwestern. I get to do a lot of cool things in our office. One of them is getting to work pretty closely with a lot of our current students. I do direct our tour guide program, so I stay connected to the young folk that way. I am going to be joined by some really wonderful students today. Before we really get rolling, I'm gonna go ahead and have them introduce themselves. So Elizabeth, do you wanna get us started?
Totally. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Bernstein. I'm a fourth-year student from New York City. I'm studying neuroscience and psychology on the pre-med track, and on campus, I'm in charge of a student organization called Camp Kesem, and I've also had experience in a lot of different areas of Northwestern, like interdisciplinary learning, research, and all of that fun stuff. Drew, would you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure thing, Elizabeth. Thanks so much for handing off the baton. Hi, everyone. My name is Drew. I'm a graduate student at the university, as well as a recent alum of the School of Communication. I'm class of 2018. Also really excited that we get to share a little bit about Northwestern today. I'm going to hand things off to Chris.
Hey everyone, I'm Chris. I'm from Houston, Texas. I study social policy in the School of Education and Social Policy. This is my last quarter here. And when I'm not in classes, I like to practice with Northwestern's club triathlon team. That's enough about me. I'm going to pass it on over to Madeleine.
Oops, Madeleine, it looks like you might be muted. We're still kind of working through.
My bad.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madeleine. I'm from San Jose, California. I studied journalism and political science with a minor in music. And in addition to being a tour guide, I've also served as an editor and writer at the Daily Northwestern.
Wonderful. So thank you all to my students who are on here with us. Just to give you an overview of the next hour, so I'm going to just start by giving you a brief overview of the university, just so you have kind of some base knowledge there. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to watch some of our live information sessions that are posted on this YouTube channel. This is a great time to remind those of you who haven't already to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We have a lot of great content, and you will get those notifications to make sure that you know about all of it going forward. But I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes, then I will hand it over to our students. We're really going to focus on student life in this hour. And so as you have questions, feel free to drop those in that chat box. We're going to be answering those throughout the panel itself. We'll also answer some stuff in real time in the chat when it's easy to do that. So just to get started, for those of you who aren't already a little bit familiar with Northwestern, we are located in Evanston, Illinois, which is the first suburb directly north of Chicago, and we're home to about 8,000 undergraduates. Now, as you can see just from the students we have on here, we do have students coming from all over. Our undergraduate student body has representatives from all 50 US states and over 75 countries. Once you add our graduate and pre-professional students into that number, we actually have over 150 campuses or countries represented on campus. So that geographic diversity is one of many ways that our students make our campus diverse. That also includes things like socioeconomic diversity, religious diversity, racial or ethnic diversity, et cetera. We really feel that having students from different backgrounds, coming from different parts of the world, with different experiences is a really important part of the campus experience, but really the academic experience as well. A lot of our classes are going to be small and discussion-based, and having those diverse perspectives involved in those discussions will really enhance your learning. We are very committed to that academic experience, and when you apply to Northwestern, you are going to apply to one of our 6 undergraduate schools, but never fear, because more than 70% of our students study more than one thing while they're with us on campus. We're able to kind of expand the opportunities available to our students through our 6-school model. So just very briefly going through our undergraduate schools, we have the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. This is our largest school. About half of our student body studies in Weinberg. It's where you're going to find a lot of our humanities programs, some social sciences, some natural sciences, foreign languages, etc. We then have our McCormick School of Engineering. Our School of Engineering is unique in its approach, which we call whole brain engineering. We basically want to ensure that our McCormick graduates are not just well-trained in engineering and in their chosen career paths, but that they're also really able to be creative problem solvers and to think critically and communicate effectively, really utilizing both sides of their brains. We have the School of Communication, which is home to some traditional communication style programs, as well as many of our performing arts programs. We have the Medill School of Journalism, Media and Integrated Marketing Communications, which is a very long name for our one major in that school, which is journalism. I know that we have Madeleine on here, who's a Medill senior. We have the Beanan School of Music, which is a conservatory style music program that's of course housed within the context of our university. So it kind of gives students in that school the best of both worlds in terms of their musical educations, but also that consistent university-wide education they'll receive. And then lastly, we have the School of Education and Social Policy, certainly not least. It is our smallest and we sometimes say mightiest school at Northwestern. It is the school that sees the most growth during a student's time on campus. So we start with an entering class of about 50 students in that school. And by the time that class graduates from Northwestern, it's increased to about 150. So we do have a lot of students who end up transferring into that school once they're on campus, which gives a great segue for kind of the idea of academic flexibility, which is a cornerstone of the Northwestern experience. We really believe that college, and Northwestern in particular, is a time for our students to explore anything they might be interested in. Sometimes your interests might fall into one type of subject, maybe related subjects, but a lot of the time that's not the case. You might love physics just as much as you love performing in plays on the stage. So we want to make sure that our students are really able to follow their interests. So not only can you take classes across the whole university, but in many, many situations, you can actually double major or major and minor or at a certificate program in a totally separate school. And I know that our students in just a little bit will have some great examples of that to offer. Part of why we're able to do this is the academic structure of our quarter system. So while many of you are probably more familiar with perhaps a semester program, so 2 academic terms in a year, we at Northwestern use the quarter system. So this effectively means that between fall, winter, and spring, you have your 3 quarters. So it's a little bit more like a trimester system in that sense sometimes. The 4th quarter is summer when you're welcome to take classes, but we don't consider it part of our kind of main academic year. The reason why the quarter system is so important is that it creates more opportunity for additional classes. So our students will take generally 3 to 4 classes per quarter, usually more on that 4 side. And that means that over the course of a given academic year, they can take 12 classes. This compares to a semester system when students might take between 8 and 10 classes per year. So over the course of 4 years as an undergraduate at Northwestern, you're taking about 48 classes. So that just gives you a ton of flexibility in terms of what you're pursuing. It means that you can change your mind once you get to campus. It means you can change your mind multiple times once you get to campus. It means you can explore those different areas that maybe are of interest to you, but you've never really had a chance to explore before. And it also means that you're going to get that really well-rounded liberal arts education. We are at our core a liberal arts university. We believe that as important as it is to pursue significant study in the areas that interest you, you have no idea what's going to happen once you leave campus. So many students and so many alumni will end up in jobs or in careers that maybe don't perfectly fit in the checkbox of what their major was. For a lot of you students who are coming into your junior or senior years of high school right now, a lot of the jobs that you might have might not even exist yet. So we think that having that solid liberal arts foundation, the critical thinking skills, the understanding of the world around you are both really, really important in making sure that we're preparing you not only for a single career path, but also for life and to be kind of a global citizen. So during your time at Northwestern, you'll take what we call distribution requirements. So depending on which of our 6 schools you're in, you'll have a specific set of kind of breadth requirements that you'll need to fulfill. In the majority of cases, this will give you a lot of flexibility in terms of those requirements. So instead of taking a specific set of core classes, you'll instead need to kind of fulfill area requirements. So you'll have some flexibility in terms of which classes you use for that. The flexibility of the quarter system also means that you do have the opportunity to really take on different majors, different minors, and still absolutely graduate with plenty of time. Now that's kind of the academic side of things. Obviously, there's much more to college than being in the classroom and the things that you're doing in the classroom. Our student panel is going to address student life. They're going to talk about a lot of the things that are happening in terms of experiential learning, research, all of that good stuff. I do also want to mention our location. I already said we're in Evanston, that first suburb north of Chicago. And something that's important to remember, especially for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit our campus, is that our students kind of get the best of all worlds when it comes to our setting. We have this beautiful campus. It's a residential experience. It's a traditional campus. If you haven't already checked out our virtual tour on our website, I definitely encourage you to do that. Our students have that kind of stereotypical college experience when you're walking through the quads with paths lined with trees and big buildings with ivy on them. But then the town of Evanston gives us that college town experience. So you have everything you might need within walking distance, whether that's coffee shops, public libraries, bookstores, a Target, which is very important to have in any college town. Really all those things you might think of when you think of a quintessential college town. But then all of those kind of little amenities are set within the context of the Chicagoland area. The Chicago area is the third largest metropolitan area in the US, and our students get to benefit from everything that means. These students will talk about their experiences in Chicago, I'm sure, but it's just really important to keep in mind that you don't have to sacrifice a certain kind of college experience or setting at Northwestern. You have the traditional residential campus, the college town, and the major city around you. And it's really easy to get between our campus in Evanston and the whole city of Chicago. We have an intercampus shuttle that runs between our Evanston campus, where our undergraduates are, and our downtown Chicago campus, which houses our medical school and our law school. That shuttle's free. It has Wi-Fi. Our students can hop on it at any time to get between those campuses. And then, of course, we also have the elevated train that is Chicago's public transportation system that will take you all over. Now, I know we're getting lots of questions already, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get to those during the student panel, but I do want to address admissions and financial aid briefly, because I know that for many of you, that's at the top of your minds as you transition into this part of your college search. So just very briefly, keep in mind that we are both a common application and coalition application school. So when you're applying to Northwestern, you can choose whichever application makes the most sense for you based on maybe how your counselor is advising you, maybe the other schools on your list. It's really up to you, no preference between those. And then we have two deadlines for first year applicants. We have our November 1st early decision deadline and then a January 2nd regular decision deadline. Keep in mind that we are an early decision school. For those of you who aren't familiar with that process, an early decision application is essentially a binding agreement. When you apply early decision to Northwestern, you, a parent or guardian, and then a counselor at your secondary school will sign a contract that states that if you are admitted to the university through that process, you will attend. You'll need to withdraw any applications from two other institutions, and you are all set to be a Wildcat the following fall. This early decision program is really great for students who know that Northwestern is their #1 choice. If you already have your closet full of Northwestern gear, if you dream in purple and white, if you want nothing more than to march through the arch, which one of our students can explain when you first get to campus, if you know that Northwestern is the right place for you, early decision might be a great option. If the idea of that binding agreement, not being able to maybe weigh your different options at other schools scares you a little bit, regular decision might be a good opportunity for you instead. So just go with the application deadline that makes the most sense for you and that you feel most comfortable with during this process. Now, when it comes to the application itself and the consideration that we go through, context is really our guiding principle. Everything about your application needs to be contextualized. We need to understand not just maybe that number at the bottom of your transcript or the number of hours you've spent in extracurricular activities. We need to understand what all of that means in the context of your life and your experience. This kind of principle of context starts with our academic review. So we will take a look at your high school record, your transcript. We say that as opposed to GPA, because again, the content and the context of that transcript gives us a lot more useful information than just the GPA might. So we want to see what kinds of classes you've taken. We want to see how you've challenged yourself. There's no specific type of curriculum that we favor in this process. We are given information by your high school that tells us what kinds of advanced courses are available, what it means for a student to challenge him or herself and at that school. And that's really what we're paying attention to. So don't worry about what's offered at your neighboring high school, what your cousin is doing at their high school. Really just worry about what's available to you, how you can pursue that rigor. And that's what we want to see on that transcript. Now, the other side of the academic review is, of course, standardized testing. We do require either an SAT or an ACT. We don't have a preference between them. We're not looking at the optional writing section of either one of those tests. And we do allow you to self-report those test scores on your application if you don't want to send those official scores to us during the application process. In that spirit, we also will superscore both of those tests. So if you've taken either the SAT or the ACT more than once and you've received higher individual section scores at different times, we will look at those highest individual section scores in our review process. Now, kind of shifting over to the more subjective parts of your application, we want to see what you're doing outside of the classroom. So that's the kind of extracurricular activities, or what we call involvement piece. We have no kind of specific checklist that we're operating with. We are not looking for you to have been involved in every single kind of activity available to you. We want to see that you're pursuing the things that matter to you. That's what really matters to us. And keep in mind that this doesn't have to be clubs and organizations. If you have a big responsibility in your house, maybe you're taking care of younger siblings or a family member, if you have a part-time job that takes up a lot of your time, maybe if you have a long commute to and from school, let us know that. That all really contributes to our understanding of that context. Then the final piece in terms of kind of external components is going to be the letters of support or letters of recommendation. So we do require one letter from a counselor at your high school, as well as one letter from a teacher. And we do recommend that that teacher be in a core academic subject from your junior or senior years of high school. So somebody who's taught you recently. Now, if you go to a high school where you don't have easy access to your counselor, we totally understand. You are in the same boat as many, many other students and many other applicants in our pool. We're still going to ask for a letter from somebody in that position, but this might be a good situation in which you take advantage of the opportunity to submit a supplementary letter of recommendation. If there's another adult in your life who can offer us a different perspective, maybe another teacher, but also maybe a coach for a sports team you're on, maybe a religious leader, maybe a supervisor at a part-time job, we welcome you to submit those kind of supplementary letters of recommendation. But keep in mind that quality is always more important than quantity. So only feel the need to do that if you truly feel that that additional person does offer us something new and a new perspective that we're not getting otherwise. And then finally, the part that you have the most control over in this process is the writing portion, so your essays. Whether you use the Common App or the Coalition, you will have that personal statement you'll submit. And then we also have a brief supplemental essay essentially asking you, why Northwestern? We don't have a specific guide for how to answer that question. We want to understand what it is about us that made you compelled to take the time to apply. We find it really nice to see your voice coming through when you're writing, because it really is the only part of this process you have total control over right when you're going through it. So that's something that we want you to take advantage of. The last thing I want to address is financial aid. So we have a couple of really important policies in terms of helping you finance your education at Northwestern. The first is that we are need blind in the admissions process for all US citizens, permanent residents, and undocumented students attending high school in the US. What this means is that as we're reviewing your application, your family's ability or inability to cover the cost of attending Northwestern will play no role in whether your application whether you're admitted or not. We're not going to consider the financial piece. The other kind of hand-in-hand policy that's really important is that we also are committed to meeting 100% of the demonstrated financial need for all of our admitted students, regardless of citizenship. So what this means is that whatever your family can't afford to contribute to the cost of your education at Northwestern, the university will cover. Now, we do this in a few different ways. We utilize scholarships and grants. Sometimes we utilize federal work study for those students who qualify. But one thing that we will never offer you is a loan. We were really excited to go fully loan-free about 4 years ago. We want to make sure that when our students graduate from Northwestern, they can really look ahead to their time in the world and not have to worry about paying back loans from their undergraduate studies. So we do fully fund students without any loans. When you're applying for financial aid, you'll submit both the FAFSA, so the federal application for student aid, as well as the CSS profile, which is a form that you'll do through the College Board's website. We want to make sure that you get any questions you have about financial aid answered. So we do encourage you to get in touch with our financial aid office. If you have questions, they're phenomenal. They are really responsive. They want to help you through this process. And definitely make sure that you and your families are checking out that net price calculator on our website to get an idea of what a financial aid package might look like for you. Now, I know that you're sick of hearing from me. I'm not the exciting part of this. One last thing I do want to address is we know that there are a lot of questions for those of you who are maybe juniors, maybe even sophomores, about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the admissions process and how that might impact what you go through over the next couple of years. We're going to throw a couple of links into the chat. The first is for the university's COVID-19 website. This is really the best source of information for how Northwestern is handling the pandemic. There's an FAQ section, including a specific admissions FAQ section that we're continually updating as we're able to. Any sort of changes to policies, changes to the way that we do things at Northwestern will be very much publicly announced and communicated to you. So please rest assured that as soon as any decisions are made, if they are made about any changes to the process in the future, you will know. The other link that we're pasting is a really wonderful blog post recently written by our Director of Undergraduate Admission, Liz Kingsley, really addressing some of the ways that you might be concerned about this process. Please keep in mind that we are going through this at the same time as you are. We're learning about things at the same time as you are, and we are very aware of kind of the anxieties that might be arising now. So definitely check out that blog post as well. Now with that, I am going to get off of your screen and I am going to go ahead and have Elizabeth take over.
Thank you, Hillary, for all that information. I'm sure that was super helpful for all of you. So we are just going to kick things off with some of your questions from the chats. And I know something that Hillary talked about is the interdisciplinary nature of Northwestern and how students are able to double major and the kind of flexibility that comes alongside studying multiple things, but also the flexibility in switching majors and changing your mind while at Northwestern. And I know, Madeleine, this is something that you have a double major and you're really passionate about flexibility at Northwestern. So could you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So that interdisciplinary focus of Northwestern is actually something that I think I love most about Northwestern. I actually came to Northwestern just with studying journalism, declared an economics double major like my third week. And then I switched out of economics, added political science, and then later on figured out that I could actually add in the music minor. So I've kind of been like all over the map, and it kind of shows you like how much flexibility there is in terms of, you know, being able to take classes in other departments, being able to add a second major, being able to drop a major if you find it's not like the right fit for you. So I found I've really been able to kind of, you know, mold all of my different interests, and Northwestern's really a place where, you know, you don't have to, you're not just taking like, you know, journalism classes. If you're a journalism major, you can take like an economics class or a film class or, you know, a Russian literature class if that's something that, you know, it looks interesting to you for that quarter. And that's something that I personally have really loved.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think something you were touching on is definitely the quarter system and how that allows all of those things to happen. So Chris, I know you have done quite a bit on campus while you've been here. Can you talk about how the quarter system has worked for you and helped you to be able to accomplish everything that you want?
Sure. Yeah. So when I first got to Northwestern, I knew that I had been approved for work study as part of my financial aid package. So during Wildcat Welcome, which is the 68-day new student orientation program, I actually went to the work study fair and found this amazing job where I got to work with preschool kids 4 to 5 days a week. And it all happened in the afternoon. And I was able to do that for my freshman and sophomore year and was able to fit that in with my classes as well as my extracurriculars. So I was also really involved in something called Dance Marathon. I got involved in Greek life, and I was also involved in another organization that does social justice facilitation. And I don't think that it would have been possible for me to do that had I not had so much flexibility with my class schedule. And then also, as I've gone on through these past 4 years, I've been able to add new clubs, take some clubs away, and have met so many amazing people through those. So now I practice with triathlon team. There's a group called Breads and Spreads, and they talk about baking bread, and I got to do some stuff with them. So just really cool things that I don't think I would have been able to do had I not had all of this flexibility with my schedule.
Awesome. So definitely part of that quarter system is taking classes. And I know someone just asked, what's the most interesting class you've taken? So Drew, could you talk us through the most interesting class you've taken, and also just a little bit about class sizes and relationships with professors at Northwestern?
Sure thing, Elizabeth. I am so glad that someone asked a question like that because there's so much variety and so much choice when it comes to the classes you can choose as a student. For me personally, I was pursuing a major in the School of Communication, Human Communication Sciences. But because I was in the School of Communication, I also had access to something called modules, which are sort of minors, but specific to the School of Communication. And through that, I got to take the comedy arts module, which was a set of classes on like performance and writing for comedy. And so for me personally, the most interesting class that I ever took was a sketch writing course, which is where it was a smaller group. There were only about 9 of us. And we'd all get together, pitch different sketches that we had written, and talk over different jokes and walk through that. Definitely a very exciting class to look forward to every week, but it was also very unique and definitely once in a lifetime experience to participate in that. For students that are looking to take a variety of classes across their time on campus, you can take one quarter, you could take a bunch of classes that are for your major. Maybe you're looking to get ahead so that you have more time in the later part of your time at Northwestern to take distribution requirements or pick electives. Maybe you want to balance out your schedule and you're wanting to take half of your classes in your major, half of your distribution requirements or electives that quarter. You really do have so much flexibility with the quarter system as we've discussed. And so really is so much variety for you to choose from. And what's nice too is that you can take additional classes if you're wanting. One thing I was really grateful to take as well was that I was a musician in high school and I wanted to continue being involved in music to some extent. And so I was able to do that in my extracurriculars, but I was also able to take voice lessons for credit as a course. So that was really nice to know as well. Just want to drive home the fact that you as a student have a lot of flexibility and there are a lot of great classes to choose from. That I just shared a little bit about my experience, but I know there's lots of other experiences out there as well. So Elizabeth, I'll kick it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. I think part of those relationships and all of those awesome classes also kind of ties in with advising here at Northwestern. And so the professors that are your professors in classes are also going to be the same people that are helping you to navigate your transitions in your time at Northwestern. So Madeleine, I know I asked you already to touch a bit on your double majors, but can you talk about how advising helped you to kind of navigate that process and also break down a little bit what the actual major change process looks like for students?
Yeah, for sure. So just in terms of advising, so with every major or minor or every kind of new certificate or anything you pick up at Northwestern, you will get an advisor that's kind of overseeing that specific major or minor. So as a journalism and political science major, I have an advisor in journalism and I have an advisor in political science. I also have an advisor in the music department. So that's really helpful, but it's also really helpful to have, I have like one kind of main advisor in the School of Journalism who's kind of my go-to. Every single quarter, I actually make an appointment with the Medill advising people and I go in and then they kind of work out my schedule. We talk about, what classes I'm taking, how many classes do I have left to graduate? Like, am I on track for everything? So I think, advising has been, kind of my saving grace here at Northwestern. Like I talk to Daniel McKenzie, who's like our Medill contact, like literally every quarter. And he's like the best person to talk to. Just also like on a personal level as well. Like they really take the time to like get to know you. Like they want to know like, what are you passionate about? What else do you do like in addition to academics? And then also hitting on that second part of the question, and so easy to change your major. It's as quick as like filling out a form and like getting it signed by someone in your department and then dropping it off. So literally changing from my economics to political science major, I just had to go pick up a form from an office and then get it signed and then drop it off. I think it was done in like literally over the course of a day.
That's awesome. Another form of advising that I know I've definitely taken some time to engage with is Northwestern Career Advancement, which is kind of the overarching career services that we have here at Northwestern. So Drew, would you want to touch a bit on how NCA helps students and kind of what those resources are?
Definitely. NCA is such a good resource for students, regardless of where you're kind of at in your career search. Maybe you're a first or second year student who's kind of just focusing more on engaging with campus and starting to look for internships, or maybe you're a student in the later stages of your time at Northwestern and you're wanting to connect in with a more professional community. The NCA, the Northwestern Career Advancement Office, is so helpful in that they can have different networking events for you, whether that's just connecting with different alumni in our alumni network, but they also have different resources for students on campus. There's always going to be a career fair, multiple career fairs throughout the year for students with some with a different focus depending on what areas you're hoping to go into. You can go in and have one-on-one appointments if you're wanting to have your resume reviewed, if you're wanting to have a practice or a mock interview. That can be very helpful if you're going into a set of interviews and you want to just get some feedback on how you present yourself. I personally have used a lot of these resources as well. They also have some really neat financial resources for students, depending on what your needs are. Some specifics that are coming to mind include that if you need professional wear for an interview, that Northwestern can help cover the cost of that professional wear. Maybe you have an interview, but it's out of state, or you have to travel for it. Northwestern can help cover those travel costs. One of my favorite resources they have that's very unique that a lot of Northwestern students take advantage of is something called the Summer Internship Grant Program, the SIGP as it's called for short. And that is a way for students to receive funding for pursuing an unpaid internship. So the thought there is that a student may want to pursue an opportunity, but because there's no financial incentive for them to do so, it may be a difficult decision. But Northwestern would instead actually cover the finances that they would be losing if they took an unpaid internship. So it kind of costs out that way. I personally was able to do that the summer after my sophomore year, and I was able to be a volunteer, medical volunteer at both Lurie's Children's Hospital, as well as the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, what's now known as the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. And those were just really profound experiences for me, for my development. And it wouldn't have been possible without some of the career office's funding. So I hope I've been able to touch on a few different interests that folks have had, but we really do have a lot of great professional resources here for our students.
Thanks, Drew. Touching upon SIGP and some of those internship opportunities that students have at Northwestern, a lot of our undergraduate schools actually have those opportunities built in. So Chris, could you talk about the practicum in CESP, maybe what you did and a little bit about what some of those built-in internship opportunities are?
Sure. So for the practicum, it's a required internship experience for all third-year students in the School of Education and Social Policy. You can either take it in the summer before or the summer after as well. And if you take it during the year, you have to be placed in an internship within the city of Chicago or surrounding areas. So for mine, I did it at a nonprofit that focuses on child development, academic success, healthy eating, and things like that in under-resourced schools within the city of Chicago. So what I did, I was a part of the research and evaluation team. So I traveled with that team to do observations and collect data on the programming to be able to put together reports to send to organization executives. And I also just did a lot of daily tracking of attendance for the program to put out different reports for the actual staff to see how they were doing. And it was a really fun activity to do. And it got me into all of these different schools that I got to see how they worked. And at the time, I thought I had wanted to do something around education policy. So it was a great way to explore that field. Unfortunately, I didn't like it as much as I wanted to, and actually changed my plans for the future as a result. But I'm still indebted to the opportunity to have the school support me through my internship search, help me build my resume, help me practice interviewing skills and stuff like that.
Awesome. And some of those kind of similar parallel opportunities exist in Medill. So Madeleine, could you talk about some of those Medill specific opportunities for all of our prospective Medill students tuning in?
Yeah, definitely. So the big thing that's kind of similar to the CESP practicum is something called journalism residency. So that's something that you do typically your junior or your third year or your fourth year. So I actually did mine last spring, and I did it at Billboard magazine in New York, which was like a dream opportunity. I literally every Monday through Friday, I got paid to come in and write about music and go to concerts and interview artists. My claim to fame was interviewing Liam Payne from One Direction, so that was really fun. So that's kind of a really amazing opportunity. We've had Medill students go to places like the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Sacramento Bee. So a lot of amazing newsrooms, but also a lot of places that are like emerging media. So We've had students go to like Facebook and Instagram and some places like PR agencies and marketing agencies. So kind of anywhere, anything in the media space, it's a really amazing opportunity. Medill actually will find you those opportunities. You get like this huge packet and you go through it and kind of list your top 10. And they actually like place you in that site. So you're there for like an entire quarter and you make some amazing connections. I have a lot of my friends that actually, got their full-time jobs after doing their journalism residencies and making those connections. So that was like an incredible opportunity for me and something that I know a lot of Medill students look forward to during their time here.
Thank you. I am going to touch a little bit now on research, which is another really awesome way to get involved outside of the classroom. So Northwestern does a really awesome job of supporting undergraduate research at Northwestern and supporting students in getting those opportunities, not only in finding a lab and finding something that interests them, but also in terms of funding, kind of similar to SIGP that Drew was talking about through Northwestern Career Advancement. So the Office of Undergraduate Research has something called an undergraduate research grant. You can apply for that either during the academic year or during the summer. And I applied for one the summer after my second year at Northwestern, and I did clinical research on orthopedic surgical outcomes in patients diagnosed with different connective tissue disorders, which is a little bit of a handful and a mouthful to say, but it was a really awesome opportunity to get involved in something that I was really interested in. But I think something important to note about Northwestern research is that it is not just STEM research. So you can truly do research in any field that you might be interested in, whether that's doing something in the School of Education and Social Policy like Chris is in, or something in Medill or poli-sci like Madeleine. There's really endless opportunities. And I know some of you have asked specifically about pre-med research opportunities in neuroscience and Feinberg. So I'll also touch on those a little bit. As a neuroscience major, I think the department as a whole, and I know many departments do a really awesome job of helping students to figure out not only what type of research do they want to do. So do they want to interact with other humans, or do they want to interact with cells in a petri dish? And so helping them kind of narrow down what labs might be a great fit for them, and then figuring out whether it's best to apply for a research grant or do research for credit, which is also a really awesome opportunity at Northwestern. Students do have the opportunity to do research in labs at Feinberg. I have a lot of different friends who did, and that's where you have a lot of really awesome clinical and medically focused opportunities. And undergraduate research grants can also apply to projects that are done at the Feinberg School of Medicine. That's a really easy thing to do because you can take that intercampus shuttle to commute there and watch your Netflix or do whatever it is you want to do while on that shuttle. But a lot of my friends also chose to do research on the Evanston campus just to kind of cut down that commute. So really up to you, and just my best advice would be in terms of research, really just finding a lab that interests you, because that's what's going to make you super excited to go every day and do the work that you're doing. Switching gears a little bit from kind of addressing some of those academic, career services, research questions that we've been talking about, I'm going to pivot a little bit to some of those fun extracurricular activities. So Drew, could you talk about what clubs and extracurriculars are like here at Northwestern, especially intramural sports?
Sure thing. I'm really glad someone asked this, because I do think something that makes Northwestern stand out from the crowd is just how much opportunity there is when it comes to getting involved outside of the classroom. There's so many different student organizations for students to get involved in. There's over 500, and that number is only continuing to grow because different student organizations will come together and form based on student ideas. So it's really fun to get involved regardless of what your interests are. There's always a space for you, there's always a home for you on campus due to that. Specifically with intramurals, if any of us are looking to stay active, there's lots of different ways to get involved in that. So we are a Division I athletic institution. If you are a varsity athlete, you are handling that kind of on your own. But for students who are interested in more intramurals or maybe club sports, those are kind of two different options as well. Think of club sports as a student who is coming from a high school sport that wants to keep playing it pretty competitively, but isn't doing it at the varsity level. So different club teams may have travel for tournaments that they get involved in. They may have practices throughout the week. So that's a really great way to stay active. Also a great way to meet a community and get involved in that. Intramurals are a step down from that in terms of your like the intensity of the sport. So it's a really great way to gather maybe some friends in your hall, or maybe a few friends from your classes to get together and play sports. And so there's different sports depending on the time of year, and everyone is competing against different intramural teams. I would say the tone of intramurals is a lot lighter as well. It's a great space to have fun and mess around with your friends. The key with intramurals is not winning. You don't have to win to have fun. I can speak on firsthand experience that you do not need to win to have fun. Lots of losses in my intramural career. One of our coworkers, Daniel, holds a very unique record at Northwestern for having not won a single intramural sport, and he made it through Northwestern just fine. So plenty of ways to get involved and to stay active, and intramurals is definitely one of them, but also the larger student group community can definitely speak to that point as well.
Awesome. So kind of touching upon that, I know someone had asked about how students are able to balance their extracurricular activities with academics and what can sometimes be a little bit of the stress of the quarter system. I want to quickly just say that the quarter system is 10 weeks of content design specifically for a 10-week period. So there, you are not going to have 15 weeks of material shortened into that 10-week period. So for example, if you were taking a class that went through the entire year, so that could be something like general chemistry, instead of having that information broken up into two 15-week semesters, you'd have it broken up into 3 10-week quarters. And I think that's actually really beneficial for students, is having that breakdown, because it doesn't overwhelm you with so much information on a final exam. But just wanted to quickly say that the quarter system is not just shrunken down semesters. But Madeleine, do you want to touch on balancing some of those extracurricular activities with the quarter system?
Yeah, definitely. So as I've kind of touched on before, my biggest involvement, my for freshman, sophomore, and junior year, was definitely working at the Daily Northwestern, which is like one of those clubs that has like kind of a big time commitment. Especially, you know, as an editor, we were there multiple nights a week, working sometimes long hours, editing stories, making sure the paper was good to go for the next day. And I would say like it definitely is kind of, I definitely found it super manageable. You know, I, set my schedules to, I'm going to do my homework here, and I'm going to do some readings, in between classes here. And I think it's kind of something about college is there's a lot of kind of initiative on you to kind of make sure you're kind of managing your time right. But I also think it's kind of with that quarter system, with that flexibility, you can kind of choose your schedule. So if I knew like I was taking like a super loaded quarter extracurricular wise, like I was like the quarter that I was like web editor for the Daily, I actually only took 3 classes that quarter to kind of, offset that, time management. I knew I was like, oh, I'm going to be devoting a lot of the time to the paper this quarter, so I'm not going to have as much time to like really put in enough time for my classes. So kind of making those kind of adjustments, and some quarters I've taken 4 or even 4.5 classes, and other quarters I've just taken 3. So that quarter system, the flexibility that it allows for, has been super helpful in kind of being able to make those decisions and make sure I'm managing my time well.
Awesome, thank you. And I know that clubs and some of those extracurriculars play a big role in students finding their home on campus. Chris, I know you were a peer advisor, so could you talk a little bit about just what the freshman experience is like on campus, and so how students find those friend groups and kind of navigate what can be a lot of different opportunities for students here?
Yes, I actually love talking about this because being a peer advisor is probably the most meaningful thing I've done in my 4 years here. And basically, there are a lot of ways in which the school tries to get first-year students and transfers acclimated to campus. And that really starts when you walk on campus, whether that be through a pre-orientation program, which can range from 3 to 8 days before the Wildcat Welcome orientation program. And that's where you're put into a group and you do various activities depending on what program you're doing. And that's a really good way to get community. There's also, Northwestern offers a lot of like pre-first year programming for different types of schools and things like the chemistry or biology bridge and Excel program. I know nothing about science here, so I don't want to like misname programs, but there are a lot of programs like that. But then when you get to the Wildcat Welcome program, you're put into these groups of students, and they can range anywhere from probably like 6 to 15 students, depending on what school you're in. And they have 1 to 2 peer advisors, which are going to be your upperclassmen students that are in the same school. And that week is a great way to get acclimated to campus. You get to hang out with your PA group. You get to eat meals together. You do things called True Northwestern Dialogues, which is the way in which university administrators kind of show what it's like to be a Wildcat and how this school supports its students. And those are some of the more serious but very informational and necessary things. But then there are also a lot of fun things that students get to do after all of the programming. So it's like they do this night where it's like comedy night, and you can see comedy groups, which is a really fun thing. But also they have Rhythm Nation, where all of the different dance groups perform, or the a cappella night, where all of the a cappella groups can perform. And it's just a really fun way to get acclimated to campus, and your peer advisor stays with you throughout the entire year. So they'll do quarterly, sometimes twice a quarter check-in. Unless you're in McCormick, it's a little different. Your peer advisor works with you about once every other week. But it's just a way to have someone who's been in your shoes support you throughout the entire first year. And my peer advisor actually graduated the year after my first year, but I'm still friends with her. I can reach out to her if I need anything. She's actually in Feinberg Medical School downtown. So those peer advisor student relationships can really be useful during your time at Northwestern.
That's awesome. Thank you. Another big part of the first 2 years on campus, and what can be ultimately up to all 4, is residential life and food. So Madeleine, can you touch a little bit on residential life? We also have a full YouTube session dedicated to it. And also, what is, in your opinion, the best food on campus?
Oh gosh, like in terms of a dining hall?
Up to you. Stick with on campus.
Okay. I'm partial. So I actually lived on campus my first 2 years. And back in when I was a first year, we actually weren't required to live on. There's a 2-year live on requirement, but I wasn't required to live on for the second year, and I chose to just because I loved it so much. So I'm super partial to Allison Hall. I think it has like the best, they actually have a dining hall, and I think it's the best food on campus. And I chose Allison Hall specifically because there's a dining hall attached to it downstairs. So in the winter times when it gets a little chilly, I'm from California, so I don't like to go outside. So I would just kind of, in my pajamas, just walk downstairs and grab some fruit or some dinner to take up to my room. So that was super, super convenient. So residential life is a super amazing experience. I actually met one of my best friends from in my my living situation. There's 3 different types of accommodations on campus. There's residential halls, residential communities, and residential colleges. There's a lot of different options for students, and it really kind of caters to what you really want to get out of your living style. We have suite style living, single living, living with one other person. So it really is kind of what you make it. You kind of just rank your accommodations. This is actually a super amazing resource by Northwestern called the Housing Guide. So that's super, it gives you pictures of all the different places on campus, and you can kind of see what the rooms look like, if they have a dining hall, things like that. But I personally loved living on campus. My Allison Hall was very special in the fact that we had like a live-in faculty member that lived downstairs, and she had a dog. So whenever students were stressed, we would go downstairs and just like hang out with that professor. She hosted like weekly meetings with like professors that would come have dinner, and students would just come over to her apartment and just kind of hang out and get to know professors. She would bake like cakes for us, and we would have like tea times. So I think that, as like a first year student coming into Northwestern, your dorm is kind of a place where you meet a lot of different people. It's kind of your home away from home that first, kind of months on campus. So that's kind of my experience living on campus. I found it to be like a really amazing experience where I met some of my closest friends that I still have to this day.
Awesome. Another great part of campus life is definitely tradition. So Drew, do you want to talk about a couple of traditions that we have here, maybe your favorite?
Sure thing. Northwestern does have a lot of fun traditions, so I'm happy to talk about that. First off, I do want to mention, I see a few of us in the comments have figured out that it was my birthday yesterday and are wishing some well wishes. So I want to say thank you so much. That's really sweet and actually really means a lot. So thank you for that. Going back to Northwestern traditions, I like the fact that Northwestern strikes a balance between some more sentimental traditions and also a lot of fun traditions as well. So a more sentimental one could be one like March Through the Arch, which is where during our orientation process, right as you get on campus, the first thing that you do collectively with your class and your group of new students is that you'll all march through the Weber Arch, which is an iconic landmark on our campus. And you're gonna have the marching band playing for you, and you have a row of family members and staff and other students cheering you on, supporting you as you kind of symbolically start your Northwestern experience and enter campus. And then your last year on campus, when you graduate, you actually march back out through the arch, symbolically kind of signifying the end of your time on campus and moving out into the world to make a positive difference. So that's one of my more favorite sentimental traditions. One of the more fun traditions to think about and to speak on that is something called Dillo Day, which is Armadillo Day for short. And it is a music festival that happens on our campus every single year. Out on the Lakeville, we do have nice prime lakefront property, so we get to take advantage of that and see different artists that have come to campus and see different performances. Would definitely look into that online and see some of the artists that we've had in the past, because we've had some really good names. It's just a great way to kind of celebrate. The weather's usually nice and sunny by that point of the year. We love sunny weather here in Evanston. And so it's really nice to celebrate with your fellow classmates. And it's near the end of the year as well, so it's kind of the celebration of like a hard year of work too.
Awesome. Another big component of Northwestern is our location. So we have both the city of Evanston, but also the city of Chicago. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Chicago. Northwestern does, in my opinion, a really awesome job of helping students to engage with Chicago and connect them to different opportunities. So a couple quick examples are that all Northwestern students get free admission to the Art Institute, which is really a great feature of Northwestern. There's also NU Day at Wrigley, where Northwestern bulk purchases a huge number of tickets to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. Both of those are really awesome opportunities. And then there's also all of the professional opportunities that we touched on a little bit earlier that really is just an awesome opportunity for students to have all of these resources at their disposal, such a world-class city. And then there's also just all the fun things there are to do in Chicago, totally unrelated to Northwestern. So coming from New York City, I love going into downtown Chicago and trying out different restaurants, going to fun activities, Millennium Park. I could talk so much about Chicago, but we are nearing the end of our time together. So the next question that I'm going to ask is, Chris, what made you choose Northwestern and why Northwestern for you?
So I chose Northwestern because I actually applied through QuestBridge, where basically after you apply to the College Match program, if you become a finalist, you get to rank schools that you're interested in applying to that are QuestBridge partner schools. And I ranked Northwestern pretty high up because one, I went to a high school where the school colors were purple, silver, and white, and we were Panthers, and I was like, oh, another school where it's like a purple cat. So that was like the top reason, but also I tended to get a little bored in high school because I felt things were going really slow in terms of the material that we were learning, and I knew that Northwestern was a school that operated on the quarter system, and I loved the idea of being able to take classes that not necessarily are fast-paced, but go at a quicker pace than, say, a semester school. And I also just love the idea of being able to try as many new things as possible, and that sort of flexibility within the quarter system and what allows that. But then there's also this famous saying that they always say at Northwestern. It's "and is in our DNA." And I really took that to heart because since being here, I've been able to be a student and be a club sports athlete or do all of these really amazing things. And I think that and is in their DNA is one of those true ways of how, or one of the true ways that Northwestern students are different from a lot of other students. It's that we're all involved in so many different things. We care about each other, and we're also great students. So that's why I chose Northwestern, and that's why I continue to choose Northwestern every single day.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So those are the big questions that we're going to answer for now, and I'm going to turn it back over to Hillary. Thanks, Hillary.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thank you so much to Drew, Chris, and Madeleine for those wonderful, insightful answers. We know that so many of you have lots going on with class and extracurriculars and everything you're doing, even from home. So thanks for taking the time. And for those of you tuning in, we really appreciate you hanging out with us for the last hour and popping those questions into the chat. We know we didn't get to all of them, but we will be sending out a follow-up email that will include answers to every question that was asked to make sure that we address everything. So if you didn't pre-register for this session through our website, look into the chat box for that link to the form. If you fill that out and let us know that you attended today, then we'll be able to get you onto that email list to get that follow-up email. We also, again, will have tons of additional opportunities in the next few weeks to engage with us online. So make sure you're subscribing to this channel. There are some really good videos on this channel about some of the topics you asked about, things like study abroad, research, innovation and opportunities there, and even residential life. So definitely check that out. We are so glad you joined us. We hope that we gave you some insight into life at Northwestern. We'll definitely hope to see you another time for a session. I'm gonna switch us to gallery view right now so everyone can wave goodbye. We're so glad to have had you all with us. We hope you have a great rest of your night.